Hi, and thanks for joining me for this little painting demo and tutorial. I've already added in my background a beautiful sunset sky that you can catch in my video called Painting Horses Part 1, Sunset Sky. For this demonstration, I'll be painting the horses and showing you how to create realistic backlit silhouettes in oil paint. I've already used my reference photo to sketch in the horses onto my surface, and I've painted the sunset in the background. Now I'm blocking them in with just a wash of brown. This first transparent layer will help give the oil paint depth and glow later. I want you to notice how I'm varying the browns used, from a lighter burnt sienna to more of a darker burnt umber color. Creating variation in your colors is another way that you keep your paintings from looking flat. Not worried too much about exact shapes or the edges at this point, just laying in an underpainting layer for now. Even if you haven't been around horses very much or at all in person, you can still learn a ton by looking at photographs and just noticing the comparisons within their body. Things like the fact that the length of the horse's head is about the same as the depth of the rib cage, and so on, finding the proportions and the comparisons. Okay, now that the horses are blocked in with brown paint, I'm going to be working on covering the rest of my surface with various shades of green to block in the fields. This section is closest to the setting sun, so I'll be painting it the lightest. Now to get some darker greens in there to give the feeling of rolling hills. On a note about creating some movement in my painting, one thing that I've done is to create triangles or wedges that head outward from a point near the barn. Do you see them? Light is spilling over from the sunset onto this part of the field, and it's going to be silhouetting the horses. So this part of the ground is a little bit lighter and a warmer shade. See how the green has a touch more yellow? We'll just finish this section off by filling in the rest of the surface and blending it all up just a little. Here I'm mixing a little gray paint to show how I paint the barn. For this gray, I'm using a mix of a blue, a red, and a green to create a really dark shade first, and then it'll be more purplish or kind of a bluish black depending on the mixture. Then white can be added to lighten it into a gray. I'll just use it to block in the dark side of the barn and add a few shadows with that darker gray on the hill. Now that our little barn has a shadowed front, I'm moving over to block in the trees on the horizon. I'm also using a little bit of a darker green to adjust the shadow on that hillside. It's time to work a bit more on showing you how to paint the horses' silhouettes. The first step is using various shades of a very dark brown to almost black to fill in the horse. I mix the brown using red and green first, and then I darken it using my dark blue. This time I'm paying more attention to the edges so that they look nice and crisp against that sunset sky. For the legs, I'm keeping things a little looser and not being super exact because they aren't a focal point. So leaving the edges there a little more blurry will help them to blend into the grasses and also to feel like they're moving. Here's the part of the horses that really makes them pop. I'm going to show how to paint the light so it looks like it's spilling over the horse's back just a little. I'm using a slightly lighter version of my brown to paint in the back of the horse where it's closest to the sky. Next, I'm adding a very bright yellow right along the outer edge of the horse's back. I'm picking up a bright orangey color. This orange is used to blend between the yellow outer edge and the brown back of the horse, blending as I go to bring the light down a little. It creates a nice glow that's called optical scatter. That glow on the horse's back, now I'm just taking some light color and using it to firm up the outline of the horse to make it really pop since it is a silhouette. And yes, my horse's head did change from one clip to the next there just because I didn't like the first one. Even though this is a silhouette, it isn't completely dark and solid. There's that light that's spilling over the horse's back, and that creates a beautiful highlight. And then, believe it or not, I still have to add some shadows on the horse, especially further away from the sunshine. Remember also to continue using different shades in your darks because you don't want just like a black. I have little bits of green, little bits of really dark purple. All those colors just add depth to what you're doing. Now I'm starting on the second horse, and I'll repeat the process that I did with the first. Since this horse is right under that setting sun, you'll see that there is even more light spilling over and an even more distinct yellow line right on the edge to create that backlit look of this horse. I think it's really cool how when you add that contrasting, super bright light line on the outer edge of the horse, contrasted with the shadows, that it makes the horse suddenly start to look really solid. And now I'm adding that optical scatter with the orange and blending, just like I did for the first horse. Notice also on this horse that there's more of that backlighting because the horse is closer to where the sunset will be reflecting, and we'll get more of that light spillage around the edge of the horse's head, on the neck a little bit, and even on the tail. Horses are pretty close to being done at this point, and I'll begin focusing more on the field and the foreground while thinking about the very final details to add into the horses. Okay, now it's time to show how I finish out the grasses in the foreground. I like to paint in a more impressionist style with lots of brush strokes. So the grasses here are in clumps that are made by the brush strokes. They have sort of lighter green edges to show the backlighting, just like on the horses, and then they'll go darker to anchor the front of the painting with a little bit more shadow. You'll also see me making some horizontal lines because that's also serves to anchor the ground. Ground lies horizontally, and even though a lot of the brush strokes are sticking up vertically to show the grasses, you still want some of those horizontal strokes in there to just show that things are lying flat. Now I've moved into the background along the skyline, and there I'm showing where the sunlight is spilling over onto the fields. Closer to the sun, it's more of a warm yellow. A little further away, I'm actually using just a little bit of white just to lighten that up and show where the light is coming over the edges. Now this is the point in the painting where you can just play with anything that needs a little bit of fixing or needs a little bit more detail on it. You saw me put a few little strokes in for the mane, and now I'm firming up that silhouette with the brightness of the sunset behind it. Just a little playing around here. Added some shadow to the front as well to show how the horses would cast shadow along the front edge of the painting, and also going back and adding some grays to finish up the detail work on the barn. For these strongest shadows here in front, I'm using some colors to keep things lively and interesting. Instead of just browns or grays, I'm using my dark blue, my dark red, and some dark green shades. Adds a lot of variety while still keeping your painting cohesive because you're using colors that you've blended with for other colors already. This is the home stretch of the painting here where I'm just adding a few little details, getting some backlighting on the edges of my barn, firming up edges around the horses, and there's not too much left to do. I really appreciate you sticking with me and watching to see how to paint these running horses silhouetted on the sunset. Be sure to like and subscribe to my channel. I'd love to be able to get more videos out to you, and definitely let me know in the comments what you'd like to see next.